Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hormone Helper podcast. I'm Coach Andrew, your hormone helper from Fit for All Fitness. I personally coach over 1,600 men and women to help better understand their hormones so they can lose weight and get their metabolism back on track. With this podcast, you're going to hear from me and my special guests about everything from metabolism to thyroid to weight loss. And we even talk a little bit of sexy time as we chat to spread more knowledge thick like butter on your hormones. If you're ready to learn, I'm ready to share, so let's do this. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. She is registered psychotherapist and certified life coach, Laura Louise. So Laura is the founder and leading educator of the Royal Arts Healing Academy. She supports individuals through a variety of programs designed to meet people really where they are and help guide them, of course, to where they want to go. So she's currently living in Oakville, and she's a recent resident there in Canada, which is great. And she's also an Amazon best-selling author with her first book, Discover You, Discovering the World. So welcome to the podcast, Laura. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for our conversation today.
Absolutely. We are excited to have you here. So essentially, I brought, after a lot of feedback from some podcast messages, also with clients as well too, I brought Laura in today really so we could have a conversation on toxic self-talk, because I believe that the way that we speak to ourselves sometimes can really inhibit our goals and the way that we change. So Laura, of all people, is going to be a really great resource on helping us all, you listeners, and even me, talk to myself a little bit better. And before you guys are thinking, no, I didn't bring her in because she's like a therapist, you're not going to get analyzed today, right? It's really just having a conversation to help you guys realize what's going on. So I'm excited for us to take this where this goes. I guess to start, because a lot of people don't, I guess, realize what negative self-talk actually is. Why don't you explain to people what your definition as a practitioner is for someone who's talking toxically to themselves, or who's really negative in nature towards themselves?
That's a great question to start off. I mean, we all have a variety of voices, I believe, in our head. And I appreciate that you said it's not about analyzing and it's not about therapy work. It's like, this is just being human. You know, when you have an idea and then there's another voice in the head that's like, oh, that's a stupid idea, or you're thinking about doing something and then there's another aspect of you that counters it. So this, I think, is happening all the time, no matter who you are, in terms of paying attention to those thoughts and where those thoughts are coming from. Because there's a lot to navigate as a human. We have a lot of different thoughts in our head that aren't necessarily us. I don't know if you've ever had the experience where all of a sudden you can hear like one of your parents' voices in your head, like you're in a situation and it's like you can hear like your dad's voice or your mom's voice, or even a friend or a sibling or anything like that, where it's like it's not your own. But a lot of those thoughts in our mind are actually not our own. It comes from many different things. We have different programming through our family lines. We have programming through society, through marketing, media, and it's happening all the time. We don't even realize it. So to actually spend time to get to know who you truly are and navigate your true intuition versus the voices. And you could be like, well, what voices? That voice. If I'm talking right now and you have like, well, what voice is she talking about? I don't have any voices. Like, that's the voice I'm talking about, where your mouth is closed, but there are thoughts happening in your mind. And sometimes those thoughts are having a conversation with each other. And you want to go to the gym, but then there's an aspect of, oh, I'm too tired. It's like, oh, but I really should go. Oh, you've been working out all week. Why don't you take a rest? It's like this dialogue that's happening all the time. So what's toxic self-talk? It would be the part of you that's getting in the way from what you truly want to create from your heart's desire. That's really how I would sum it up.
I love that. And I love how you use the word intuition, because so many people, I think, are not emotionally aware enough or even mentally aware enough to recognize when their intuition comes up. And whether you call it gut feeling, intuition, highest self. There's a lot of different ways that people label it, but really it's essentially that your truest self talking to you in a way that's like, hey, you should trust this or speak about this in the moment. So I like the way that you use that. Um, as as a fellow coach, what kinds of struggles in terms of self-talk are you seeing that people are coming in with now recently, like over the span of these past 2 years? Because a lot's really changed with the demographics, society, a lot of that stuff. So how are you seeing people come in to you now with those things?
Great thing to talk about because I feel like the past few years of the pandemic, everything got really small, meaning from a very practical standpoint, you weren't allowed to leave your house, you weren't allowed to see people or go out in public. This constraint happened in terms of traveling and seeing the world from a bigger place. And the impact that's had on the mind, I think, is really significant and needs to be talked about, where I don't feel like people's dreams are big or their ambitions are big. It's very small now. The bar is low. The fact that we can just like be out and see people is a win. But
Mm,
like that used to be just normal. We didn't think about that. So it's like we have to be really mindful of where our mind was in expansion and then now where it might be contained,
mm.
smaller, like your dreams, your goals, your ambitions, what you want to do with your day. Going to the grocery store is a huge task, like because that used to be like the only outing you could do when we were in the pandemic.
Yeah.
But that used to just be like, oh, that's just one of the things of the many.
Mm,
So in terms of the answer to this, I would say fear. There's this rooted, embedded fear. Um, and not that people are consciously even thinking, oh, I'm scared, but that it's laced in there now and we have to break through that fear, break through the constraints that are holding us back and start to think bigger. Where's your standard at, your bar? And you might have had to lower the bar to because of where the situation that we're living in, but like raise the bar again. Is just survival your bar?
mm.
Just getting by your bar? Or do you want to actually have the best health you can have? You want to have like love and joy in your relationships. You want to have more energy versus just like, oh, I got through the day. So I think playing with that bar and raising that bar and navigating what's actually keeping the bar low, it's usually fear. And
I
I
love
think
that.
self-doubt. Self-doubt, I think, is one of the greatest self-talks that is just poison.
Mhm. I think people went from coping to complacency. And then when you talk about that new norm aspect of it, there are a lot of people that I'm coming across now where it's very easy for them to give their power of change to someone else, where we tend to always blame the external, where it's like, it's my job. It's, someone else has taken my time. And the moment you pass that power over, it's almost like you can no longer choose when really it's like we have that active choice all the time. It's just, are you willing to take a look at that and change that through the
Active choice, I think, is powerful to even highlight, the idea that you are choosing your thoughts, you're choosing where you're focusing, you're choosing your words. And you can look at the world like, oh, the world is so crazy and so terrible, and this person is this way, and this situation is that way, and all the power is outside of you, when really it's all within you, and you're choosing at a very small level where you're putting that focus, but it affects a huge level of your life, huge level.
do you think that COVID was the fire starter that changed this? Or do you think maybe it was that like straw that broke the camel's back where it's like it was already happening and then it was like, oh, by the way, here's a magnifying glass right over all of your problems?
I 100% think it was already happening.
Hmm.
A lot of people can blame COVID, but COVID got to show where you were strong and where you were weak.
Mhm.
And everybody was in the same situation, and you got to see that. You see that in people, like who really rose above the times and who got lost in the sauce.
Hmm.
Parenting, right? Some parents lost their absolute mind, turned to alcohol, turned to like complete stress and just losing it. And you can understand why, first of all. There's no judgment. understand why. Nobody ever in the history has a book on how to parent during a pandemic. Like, good luck. But some parents got really creative and really brought the family together around the table and ate dinners together and cooked together and made it fun and playful. Um, Same situation, same circumstance, but what did you choose? Even as an individual, somebody living alone, getting super depressed, losing themselves, lost, and then other people living alone, afraid of projects and having, doing cool things and art, whether it's through art or music or exploring different hobbies that they never had a chance to explore. So same situation, same circumstance. How did you choose? And not just how did you choose, but what do you want to choose moving forward? Maybe you did lose yourself in the pandemic, but is that where you want to be for the rest of your life? Maybe you got the best of yourself. Some people, they found aspects of themselves and they're so excited to have like new hobbies and things like that. Things opened up and all that stuff just got lost. Did you actually take the lessons and implement it and maintain them when those doors open?
I think the hardest part through the past couple of years is everyone around, like it's not also just your negative self-talk, it's the influence of others, which becomes very, very difficult. Where like we all have the friend that's like, oh man, why are you going to the gym again? Like just nah, come hang out with us, right? Or it's like or everyone always inviting you out to dinner and you just always have to say yes. Then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know how I ate so much, right? And that whole aspect of people almost wanting to stay at the same level, that whenever, whether you're in a group environment or even a small family environment, it's like every time someone ascends to a different level, whether it's a new goal or new growth, personal business, doesn't matter what it is, the farther they get from where these people are, where the people around you in your life, if they still want to stay there and not grow with you, almost like they scream louder to get you to come back down into that moment.
Oh, it's so valuable what you're talking about. Oh my God. And the idea that it, what I talked about earlier with all of that within yourself to navigate, all of the different programming and the how you were raised and all of that by yourself alone in your mind is so much to navigate that when you conquer it and you actually make a change and you actually implement some different practices and you grow in some way and you expand in some way, it takes a lot to do that. And then you're surrounded by someone that just like puts that down or knocks you back into where you were or sees you as your old self and they don't allow you to expand. Like it's so sad that you do all that work on your own, then you go out in the world and just get shit on essentially. And it's like, how are you supposed to maintain that? How are you supposed to get through that? And the reality is, not everybody in your life is supposed to support your dream, your vision, your goal, your heart's desire. That's your responsibility. It's your responsibility to make that decision for yourself. It's your responsibility to make those changes, whether it's through nutrition or physical activity, whether it's a new hobby or a new thing you want to learn, a new project, a new business, whatever it is, that's your responsibility. That's your choice. That's your endeavor. That's coming through you for a reason. It's nobody else's job to do that for you. You have to be the one that sets the discipline in, the boundaries. You have to be the one that you treat people how to train you. So when people put you down and you allow that, you allow that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I had this pop up on my phone today. It was like, you violate your own boundaries. I think
Interesting.
other people do it, but it's like, no, we have to actually take full responsibility. And if you only surround yourself with people that are going to take you down, then you actually have to do relationship inventory on who you're surrounding yourself with.
It's so interesting because when people start looking and doing inner work, oftentimes it's easy for the situation to get worse because you really don't know how deep your shit is. And you're like, oh, wow, it's actually really deep. And maybe I am worse than what I thought. Like almost there's this like when people go through life unhappy, but they're not aware, at least it's like, I might not be happy, but I don't know really how bad it is. And then once you're shown the depth and you're looking at this pool, you're like, how the hell do I fix this? And, I'll share a personal thing. So going through COVID, we had a physical facility and obviously couldn't do physical things. And we had to close that down, hence our decision to go online. And in doing that, I became so captured in I just have to make my dream continue and survive that I really didn't focus on me. And then once that entire thing stopped, I really recognized like, oh, wow, I actually never processed a lot of the struggle, the grief, the frustration that's there. And people have a lot of unresolved, I don't want to use the word trauma because I don't think everyone has gone through something traumatic, maybe like unresolved situations, stressors that like they're either like not looking at or maybe they don't realize they have and they just kind of power through it. But it's like it's all adding weight that goes into their life.
Yeah, I mean, when you say trauma, I think we can all relate on one trauma, and nobody's really calling it that or naming it that, but COVID is one, 100%. And if you think that's the only one, there's so many challenges and so many moments of time that we go through it and just keep going. And we go through it, we just keep going, and we don't actually digest it or see its impact on us. And it's not about being a victim, like, oh, poor me, I had this trauma. It's like, no, 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 you lived life. That's what being a human is. But then when you have to look at those aspects and grow, and like, love what you said too about that inner work. It's like, how deep does this go? And the reality is, if you're willing to go into the depths of yourself, you can handle anything life gives you. Anything. And I will speak that and I'll run with that. And anyone can challenge me up, but like sincerely, if you have the courage to go within, you have the ability to go into those shadows and bring light there. You have the ability to transmute that. You have the ability to look at those challenges and those difficult times and be able to learn and grow, and through it, you can do anything. No one outside of you can push you around because you've already gone to those depths. That's where true confidence comes from. That's where true strength comes from. That's where true resilience comes from. It's when you've conquered yourself.
Mhm.
And then life will present you with new mountains to climb, but you know you can do it because you've done it before and no mountain can be too high.
You know what's so funny is there's a lot on social media lately talking about finding better coping mechanisms. And I partially hate it because to me, if you have to cope, there's something wrong. And finding a better way to cope with what's wrong doesn't really address what's wrong. And whether it's people are always looking at the negative coping mechanisms for sure, right? Like you overeat or maybe drink or you smoke cigarettes out of stress, but really anything used to cope I think could be bad if you just do it excessively, which is what coping is. The worse your problem is, then I can outwork myself or exercise to the point in which I do damage or hurt myself, right? But what's your take on kind of this whole focus on coping mechanisms and not actually what you're coping with?
Well, based on your perspective, it sounds like I'm drowning. Okay, here's some water wings. Oh, you know what? Here's a pool noodle. Oh, you know what? Here's a lifesaver, whatever those things are called. Or you can learn how to swim.
Mm, I
So
like that.
people are literally just trying to survive and that's the difference between surviving and thriving is like you're just putting band-aids on things. You're not actually dealing with the root. And that's the deeper work, right? When you go into that root and you clear that up, again, you're going to be thrown in the pool and you'll be fine. It's like, I got this. Just float away or do the backstroke or enjoy the pool rather than be like, oh, I gotta get out of here.
Mm, that's crazy. It's one of those things, but I think from a self-talk perspective, we talked about like you have to realize it first, which is huge. And there's a lot of, in preparation of speaking with you, because I was like, I can't look stupid in front of Laura. I gotta at least pretend to know something. I was coming across a lot of different, and I will say to everyone on the podcast, my inner work journey is relatively new. So I was like, my parents are Portuguese. They didn't Nobody talked about emotions, other thing. I don't blame them. Like they just it wasn't something that we talked about. Same thing with stress. It was just like, shut up, turn your head around and let's go. Right. So this is relatively new for me, but apparently there's different types of self-talk or ways that people tend to like speak to each other. Like, what are the things that you're seeing with people coming in terms of the way that they talk about themselves?
Well, people aren't necessarily realizing that they are talking to themselves. But it's like, think about this. You decide that you want to have a healthier lifestyle, right? So you start to look at the nutrition, start to look at the food you're eating, you start to look at your movement and exercises, and you're doing all these amazing things. You've, in terms of self-exploration and self-discovery, I think nutrition can be a gateway to that because in order for you to look at your nutrition, you have to look at what you eat. And in order to look at what you eat, you have to start to analyze like where that came from. So like for example, for me, I come from an Italian background. So that's breads and pizzas and pastas and all these carbs, right? So if I'm looking at my health, it's like, oh, I can't eat those things every single day. That's not in alignment to my health. So now I have to start to look at the emotional attachment to these foods. I have to start to look at the patterns that got developed around those foods. It's related to connection and love and family. Like I have to look at all of that and clean all of that up to make that conscious shift of food. So if I manage to get through all of that and I start to develop a healthier nutrition or different nutrition that's in alignment to more energy and more vitality. And then I start looking at my exercising and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start going to the gym. Every single day I go to the gym, I still have to deal with the part of me that's like, I don't feel like going to the gym.
Hmm.
Not one day am I like, yeah, I'm going to the gym. Like I have to get myself to that point. And even then I'm like, oh, my heels are in the ground. So if I get across that barrier and I finally get a momentum where now I'm eating more better nutrition, I have my physical health, I have a routine, I'm going to the gym, all of these great things, I'm checking off these boxes for more health, more vitality, better energy, and I'm actually feeling good. And I go to the mirror and I start, oh, look at this thing on my face. Oh, I'm so fat, or oh, this looks like shit, or I can't believe my hair. And I do all the right things. I check off all the boxes. I literally just drink poison with my self-talk, being critical, being judgmental, insulting myself. The way we treat ourselves inside, we would never speak like that to a child or to another person outside of ourselves. We would never do that. Yet for whatever reason, there's some reel in our minds that goes off and sees all of our shortcomings, all of the things that go wrong, all of the things that we like, and not from a place that's like constructive criticism either. It's not like, oh, you know what? I'm starting to see some definition in my arms, but not so much in my legs. I'm gonna start working on my legs.
Mhm.
That's positive honesty with yourself versus like, oh, I'm so fat in my legs. Like, why do I even bother?
Yeah.
Like, and then all of a sudden I can spin out on some downward spiral. So we have to be mindful of when we actually drink that poison. We eat the right foods, we do the right activities, we're maybe reading the right books and you're listening to the right podcasts, you're doing all these good things for yourself. And then that self-talk in your mind, it throws you back 10 steps. So you do one step forward with good nutrition, two steps forward with healthy lifestyle, and then you go and you talk shit about yourself and it's like 5 steps back. So then you do 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 4 steps forward, 1 step back, and you're generating a lot of energy, but you're actually not getting anywhere. You're not making any change because you haven't done the inside job, which is your mind and your self-talk. And
Mhm.
when you align that and the right actions, unstoppable, unstoppable.
And that's the interesting part where like when you talk about like I guess there's an order. Whenever someone is stuck at a point in their life, doesn't matter what it is, their health could be a financial thing, maybe they're stuck somewhere in the business. 9 times out of 10, they need to do mental work and self-work to overcome whatever is being reflected there. And people always think that that stuff is separate. I'm going to work on my business. I'm going to work on my family. Then I'm going to work on me. But it's like these things are all connected. And once you realize it's all connected and that they have to grow together, like the most people who have these things where they're like, oh my God, how can this power mom, like she's got 2 kids, but she's exercising, she's doing this, she has a full-time job. And they're like, how is this possible? And you look at them and literally they have growth and they've grown in all areas at the same time. That's a big thing too, is really taking a look and saying, like, where is it that I need to grow within my life? And then bringing it back to, what's preventing them from doing that, right?
And I think the general rule is it's 80% psychology, 20% strategy. So if you're not addressing the psychology of you and your business and your relationships, then your strategy is only going to take you so far, sincerely. And I think also in this conversation, it's important to have compassion for ourselves and understand, like, well, why do we have such terrible self-talk? Our whole system is programming us to look at where we fall short. Our whole system. Think about the education system. If you've ever did a test and you did really well, maybe you got 95%, the first thing you're going to do is look and see the 5 that you got wrong. 100 questions, you got 95 right. You flip through the test and you look to see, well, which ones did I get wrong?
Very true. Yeah.
It's so rooted. Our everything, every product, you need this product to be skinnier, you need this product to be taller, you need this product to be faster, you need this product to be more beautiful, you need this product to have success, you need this, like, everything that's coming in. So think about this. We are dealing with over 350,000 stimuli every minute. We're not consciously, pulling in every 350,000 stimuli every minute and thinking, like, okay, how is this impacting me? It's all just coming in. And it's subtle. We're subtly programmed to think that we're not enough. We're subtly programmed to think that we need something outside of ourselves in order to be enough. So that when you go and look in the mirror and you're quiet in your mind and you're resting your head on your pillow and you're all alone and none of that's around, that internal voice is negative because it's been developed over time and from all angles. So to counter that, you actually need to put energy into creating more positive self-talk. Have you ever seen that image? It's kind of all over Instagram and online right now. And essentially, someone will have like a glass and they put water in and it's just dirty water.
Okay.
And then you can get a spoon and you can spoon out the dirt, but it's going to take you a while. Or you could just get a jug of clean water and just start pouring it into the glass. And eventually that clean water is going to overflow until the water is just clean and pure and all the dirt is gone. So it's not that we have to look at the negative self-talk and try to clean up the negative self-talk. We just have to focus on the positive self-talk, the positive affirmations, the positive incantations, the positive practices until that negative self-talk gets quieter and quieter and quieter. And it becomes a whisper instead of loud and screaming at us. And that we think it's so loud that we think that it's who we are.
That's crazy,
And
isn't
that's
it?
who we are at all.
Mm-hmm. And I know that it's really at a high level point, but it's almost at a point of like the ego, in which case it's always battling and trying to keep itself alive because it thinks it's trying to protect you. And that's part of the reason why I think people, especially millennials and people who spend a lot of time on social media, they get the kick because it's like that affirmation that they're like, that they mean something, that they're doing positive, that they're doing well. And yet there is so much negativity around how people use the app, the things that they post, the insecurities, because it's a highlight reel. What are your thoughts on the way that social media has kind of changed the way that people talk about themselves?
Social media is a tool. And like any tool, it can be destructive or it can help you build. And so if I had a hammer and I'm putting a nail in the wall, that's using it as a tool to hang up a picture. Or I can take the hammer and I can crash it across somebody's head. Same tool. And social media is this tool that we can allow it to be destructive and poison us and take in all kinds of negative stuff and let that influence us. Or we can use it as a tool to take in positive things and uplift us and support us. And we can use it as a tool in our lives, whether it's to take in energy, right? So some people go to social media so that they can take in. They go in to get news or information or watch videos or motivation or whatever. So you're absorbing. But some people go to social media to put out. Maybe they're sending comments or messages, or they're creating their own videos, their own content, they're putting it out there. So you have to monitor, what are you taking in and what are you putting out? And is it in alignment to who you want to be? Is it in alignment to goodness and beauty and joy and love? Right? So you could go in social media and watch all of the terrible news that's going on, all of these, devastations, and like you're gonna leave, you're gonna feel pretty shitty, guaranteed. You will. Or you can go to social media and you can look at, people who inspire you and have like really positive messages and get you excited to do different things in your life or creative ideas. And you leave social media, you're like, yeah, this is great. You feel fired up, you get excited, maybe even take action and implement something that you saw on social media. Both of those opportunities are there for everybody, but you're choosing which one. And you're choosing it all the time because we don't escape it, right? It's in our back pocket. And the same thing with our output energy. Are you going online and you're complaining and you're highlighting all the negativity and you're bashing people that are out there doing something in the world, like, oh yeah, and you're judging it and you're criticizing it? What energy is that? Anger, frustration. It doesn't feel like it's in alignment to a higher purpose. It doesn't feel like it's in alignment to feeling these aspects of peace or joy or love, which is, the aspects that I'm after anyway.
Hmm.
So I'm conscious about what I put up. I'm conscious about, it's like that what you said earlier when you're doing something and then somebody is like, oh, you're always going to the gym. Like it subtly brings you down or takes
Hmm.
you away from what is it you want to do. But that's happening through social media too. If you're gonna make a comment, make a positive comment. Or don't
Hmm.
say anything at all. Just keep scrolling by. If you see something online that you don't resonate with, it's okay. There's thousands of other things. Just keep scrolling.
Unfollow them, and you never see
Unfollow.
it ever again. Yeah.
But what's happened is people are so angry and miserable inside that they need something outside of them to be able to validate that. And you
Hmm.
got to start to question yourself, why are you living like that? Why are you living in that misery when there's so many other options in the world? Like you're choosing that. And you might be, oh, Laura, I'm not choosing that. You don't understand. I understand. I work with hundreds of people. I get it. And I've worked with myself. I get it. It's life's hard. It's a challenge, but you get to choose how you walk that out. It's like we live in Canada and we get all the seasons. My preference is hot summer days, going to the beach. My preference isn't cold winter. And I
Yeah.
used to go kind of up and down, right? When it was winter time, I'd be really miserable. Like, why do I live here? Like, oh, I gotta move. Like, and I started to realize, like, I don't want to be operating in this miserable way every time it's winter. Like, what the hell? Like, I don't want to live like this.
Mhm.
So I started to focus on, what about winter can I love? The hot chocolates and the fires and the big cozy sweaters and the hats and the cute outfits and and being inside, which means, okay, while it's wintertime, I'm going to do inside projects. So that's when I work on my writing books. That's when I'm working on courses. That's when I'm working on creative projects that require me to stay inside. Because then when it's summertime, see ya. I want to be outside. I want to be out for walks. I want to be by the beach. I want to be
Right.
enjoying the weather. So now I've cultivated my life to roll with the seasons rather than the seasons take me out.
Hmm.
And life, this is a metaphor too to life, where it's like some days are shiny and bright and it's great and you're excited about it. And some days there's a storm. But are you out in the storm miserable, or are you looking for your umbrella and your rain boots and figuring out a way to play in the puddles? And
Yeah.
over and over again, we'll be exposed to these metaphors until we actually realize as human beings that it's a conscious choice.
Hmm.
And we need to start consciously choosing more love, more peace, and more joy in the world. And the only way to do that is if we cultivate that within ourselves. And then that happens, you do it within yourself, and then it comes into your relationships, it comes in with your kids and your family and your workplace, and it just keeps spreading out. And then eventually that's when the world flips. But judging the world as it is now isn't going to create any change.
And I think you said a really great line that I think everybody should drive home. What is it that you put in versus what is it that you put out? And I believe that's how you said it. And I think that is really good because people do not take onus. They don't take onus of the energy that they expend all the time, whether it's negative or positive. They don't take onus of reading, like, what am I doing versus what is actually happening? Because sometimes people genuinely believe that they're working on themselves or they're trying to do good things, but the energy being spent isn't having a good return, right? And it's like, we would assess this with our money, we would assess this with other things. So why don't we assess that with ourselves? Am I putting too much in a relationship that isn't giving me the return that I thought it was going to be? Like you said, making sure that you're getting rid of those people. So I think it falls upon everybody, whether you're working on your physical health or you're working on your mental health and your emotional headspace. You want to make sure that you're taking account of those things. So I think that that's great that you mentioned that. One thing, though, that I think is really hard, and where the headspace, I believe, and the toxic self-taught is almost brought in as kids, is most people and families, the people that I'm speaking to, they don't have an outlet. Like, I think with physical danger or even like bad jobs, poor bosses, like, if you don't like it, you can run. And sometimes in the world, you can't run. So if you can't run and you can't fight, you just you internalize everything. You just become this messy ball because you don't know how to have a proper outlet for it. What do you think about that?
Or you've said so many things. Okay, first I have to rewind just a second here.
Yeah.
You had mentioned about uh, getting rid of relationships.
Hmm.
So I said relationship inventory, which is really important, a difference, because there's a lot of voices out there that talk about getting rid of people out of your life, and that's not the place I come from. You want to be mindful of where you spend your time and energy in terms of relationships, and if is it filling you or is it taking from you? And you don't want to always be around people that take from you because then it's only one-sided. If you find a relationship where it's both give and take and you provide and they provide for you, like that's the ultimate, but it's not every relationship. Some relationships you are meant to be the one that gives, and you can't make that wrong. You just don't want it to be that every relationship is like that and you don't have any relationships around you that are supporting you and raising you up. So if your family, you go there and they challenge you, that doesn't mean cut your family out. If you have friends that are, toxic and toxic habits, that doesn't mean cut them out completely. Oh, sorry, I'm growing and changing and you don't get to come with me. See ya. Like
Yeah.
I really don't believe it's about that. We're all in this together. And there's going to be times where you're growing and you're strong and you're that light and you're going to need to be that for somebody else.
That's an
Now,
interesting take because I had never actually thought of it that way, which is good, right? So I'm learning something through this as well too. So I like that. You can continue.
yeah, yeah, no problem. And I just wanted to highlight it because it really is a big voice out there around cutting people out of your life, cutting toxic people out of your life. And it's like, I don't know if that's the answer. Instead, you got to cut the toxicity within you. And then sometimes you got to be that positive voice for somebody else. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have people around you that are going to support you and be encouraging. You need to have, I like to think of it as like hoops, right? Like the hula hoop that's closest to you, those are the relationships that go both ways. People that you go to give and they go to give to you. And it's just like, it's a nice balance. The second hula hoop, maybe the people that are close, they fill you up in some ways, but then there's always people that you are meant to support and be that for others, and you don't cut those people out. You just make sure you fill yourself up so you have the energy and the ability to be able to provide to those relationships. And if you don't, and you need to take some time from them, you take that time. But I don't think it's about cutting people out. Now, in terms of the question around, uh, what was the last final question
So,
that you?
so I had talked about when kids are, or not kids, but people are growing up. They don't have a place to run from their problems. They
The
may
outlet,
be in
yeah.
situations where they can't fight. So they internalize everything. And their primary function that they learn subconsciously is like, I just have to internalize every single problem. And that talk begins to build.
Yeah, and you talked about having an outlet for that and like what do you
Mhm.
do? And if somebody hasn't, they're in a situation and they want to run, they can't run. It's paralyzing in a sense. And I think it's first and foremost important to recognize you always have options. What happens is in our mind, we close ourselves off to options and we don't think we have options. So, as a side note, I'm a big advocate for suicide prevention. And I'm not going to get into that entirely, but essentially, suicide is when you're so in it, you don't see a way out. And that's why people think about suicide because they don't have any other way that's like, that's the way, that's the easiest, that's the only option they can see. But that's not the only option. And sometimes we can be in a space where it feels like it's the only option. And like, I get it, it's a 100%. But when you're in a position and you're in a place where you feel like you can't fight and you feel like you can't run, it's that you feel that way. You're not seeing that there's other options. And sometimes you have to go outside of yourself to see other options. That's why having a professional coach or having a professional mentor or somebody that can help you see outside of yourself is so beneficial. Or even just a friend. I'm not here to sell
Mhm.
anything. Like even just talking to a friend that has a different perspective and they can help you see a different option or a different lens. That helps you get out of yourself in terms of, oh, where do I go? But what you're describing so elegantly is the stress response. When we are stressed, we activate the stress response, which is literally the brain releasing chemicals through our body to be able to run for our life or fight for our life. And when we were like in the wilderness and maybe there was a bear or a tiger and we had to run for our life, yeah, that makes sense. Or we had to fight for our life, that makes sense. But now what's happening is it could be your own kid walking through the door and the stress response goes off. It could be your boss, it could be your partner.
Mhm.
And we're in a space of I gotta run or I gotta fight. And that's really the biggest problem. It's like we have to learn how to address stress, learn how to calm the brain so that we can address the situations that are stressing us out. But when we have that stress response activated, we're literally in that primal way of being in the world where it's like run or
Mhm.
fight. And now, there's a conversation around run, flight, fight, and freeze is another one. But I
Yep.
honestly think freeze is part of flight. Have you ever experienced like you're with somebody and they're there, but they're not really there? They're kind
Yes.
of glazed over,
Uh-huh.
Or maybe you've been that person before where you're
Or
like,
it's
you're
it's
there, but
almost
you're
a
not there.
shock, right? Like where
Yes.
someone, it doesn't, you could tell that they want to move, they just literally can't. And you're like, what are you doing? Right. And
I,
yeah,
I
it's
I
it's
think a lot
very
of
real.
people are operating like that after COVID. It's like they're glazed over
Mm.
and they're moving through the motions, but they're actually not there consciously entirely for them. So this fight or flight, you have to address that before you're able to see any options. Meaning, what do you do to reduce stress in your life? The quickest way to do that is through the senses because the senses help calm the brain. So a lot of times you might be exposed to mindfulness-based practices and it's like, oh my God, like mindfulness, like, what am I going to smell stuff and like, taste stuff? Like, okay, like, do you understand how many problems I have? And it's like, so
I
like
love how they
people,
think it's so woo-woo, where
yeah,
people
yeah,
are
they
just
don't
like,
take
are
it
you gonna touch a
seriously.
spirit? Like, no. Like,
They don't take it seriously because they don't understand the importance of the senses. And it's simple in terms of, let's say you go for a walk. So many people will be like, "Oh, I go for a walk, I feel so much better." Why? Well, you see different sights, you hear different sounds, there's different smells, the different temperature you're feeling. Like it's a sensory overload that helps just calm everything down. I don't know if you ever had the experience where you go for a walk and all of a sudden you have clarity on whatever problem you had or whatever situation it was. And it's
Mhm.
because you've calmed the system and now you can see clearly. And we talked about intuition at the beginning of this conversation. You can't access your intuition when you're in the stress response. You can't access the part of you that actually knows what you need to do when you're in that stress response. You have to deal with the stress before you deal with the situation. And that's usually the tools that people put on the back burner when they're stressed. Exercise. It releases endorphins, it helps with stress. Going for walks, music, even like having cooking or baking or eating
Mhm.
healthy food or laughing and talking, like all these things help reduce stress. But when you have a lot of things on your list of things that are stressing you out, those are the things you don't do.
Yeah.
Those are the things you don't do. I don't have time for a walk. Do you know what I have on my list to do today? I don't
Mhm.
have time to listen to music. Do you know what I have to do today?
I
And
think it's
it's like,
because they don't
well,
see the immediate benefit of it, right? It's not, I think people now are conditioned in this thing where it's like, if I get something, if I want something, I get it now, right? Same day, next day delivery. Like I buy the car, I get the car. Where anything that involves our personal self, you might go for 10 walks and be like, I don't feel anything different. And the 11th walk, you're like, holy shit, I actually like this. Something has completely changed, and people I think need to give it that time, but need to decondition themselves where like if you felt this way for 5 years, you're not getting over this in 3 days. And that's where I think a lot of people have that impatience with meditation, with breath work, to even taking ice showers, or I don't know if you do that. So it's so funny. My wife hates it so much, but I like doing that stuff. But it's like you have to do it consistently and be willing and open to see that change, like you talked about, and actually accepting, letting in the possibility of different outcome, of feeling better, to then be like, oh wow, this works. Otherwise the tool is just a tool. Like, I mean, we all know those guys that got 15 tools in the garage that they never use, and they still have the stickers on them, and that's it, right?
Yeah, and you have years of programming that negative self-talk. Years. And unconsciously programming. It was coming in from all angles, family, friends, school, society, marketing, all coming in. So you become conscious of what that self-talk and how poison it is. It's like, oh, I need to change this. Just becoming aware. I mean, awareness, I think, is a good solid 80% of the work, which is good news, right? Awareness, it gives you a lot of power and space. But then to actually change it, it takes repetition, it takes time, it takes devotion. And I actually wanted to talk about this too, because it's one thing to highlight negative self-talk, but one thing I want to leave people with is some tools on how to address it.
I would
And it
love that. Yes. Everyone
yeah,
needs
one
tools. And
everyone
it's
needs
something.
tools.
Everyone needs tools.
Now, the one tool I'm going to talk about is going to be one that has likely been heard before. And it can get blown off really easy because it's like, oh, it's like the hammer. It's like, oh yeah, I got a hammer. I don't need anybody to show me how to use a hammer. I know what I'm doing. So it's like one of those tools it's so um over highlighted that it doesn't get used. And that tool is practicing gratitude. And the reason the gratitude practice is so helpful is because you literally train yourself to focus on what's going what's going well, or something that you appreciate, or something that is positive. So you have to look around and actually name it. Now, there's layers to the gratitude practice that I want to weave in here. And one, write it down. It's not just about naming it, it's actually write it down. You anchor that energy through your nervous system. You're anchoring that energy down into the physical on paper. And you don't just write a list. Oh, I'm thankful for the trees, I'm thankful for water, I'm thankful for podcasts. You actually write down the why. I'm thankful for trees because they help me stay calm when I'm looking at them and I realize that they provide me with oxygen. I'm thankful for water because all I have to do is turn on a tap and I get clean water that I can drink and cook with. I'm thankful for podcasts because while I'm driving in traffic, I can just listen to Andrew and all his amazing guests and talks,
Oh,
and it's
shucks.
inspiring and so great. So when you put the why, you put the emotion and the energy, and that actually starts to anchor it on a nervous system level. It starts to anchor it from an energetic level, and that's where the change comes in. If you just list things, you're not putting any energy or emotion in it. But when you list the why you're grateful, that's where the more energy gets put behind it. And there's people that I've had, they're like, oh, I don't have anything great to be grateful for. You have no idea, everything's falling apart, blah 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 blah. If you have the ability to say that and complain about everything that's
You're
going on, you have
probably
lots
more
to be grateful
fortunate
for.
than you realize.
You can
Yeah.
speak, you can hear, you're standing, you're walking, you're sitting. Do you understand, like, if you lose any of those things, how significant that is?
Mhm.
To be able to, like, to sit down and stand up, to be able to walk up and down stairs, to be able to move arms and hug the people that you love, or to carry something. Like, anyone with chronic pain or an illness knows how precious those things are. But I really recommend that you don't wait until life delivers you a significant challenge like an illness, where you start to wake up and appreciate your life. Where you start to wake up and be like, oh, maybe I should do something about my health now. Maybe I should look at these aspects. It's like, don't wait till something traumatic happens to before you take in these lessons and start to implement it. So gratitude and the energy in gratitude is huge way that you could start to pour that clean water in that dirty cup and start to overflow the dirt so that you're starting to generate more positivity. And the other thing is, a lot of people will talk about affirmations where you write something positive, and I just don't think affirmations are enough. You could put these post-its all over the place, and yes, it's
Okay.
helping you subconsciously, but you again have to put energy behind it. So um, let's say I'm starting to eat. I'm getting rid of the pizzas and the pastas. I'm starting to eat healthy. I've got on some nutrition program you've put me on, and I'm doing the fitness stuff and I'm exercising. I'm going to the gym 4 times a week, and I'm walking the other days, and I'm doing all this physical work. So I might add in an affirmation that's in alignment to where I want to go, which is more energy or healthy lifestyle. And an affirmation would be something you follow the words I am in the present tense, meaning I'm not going to say um, I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to be healthy. I'm going to be healthy. I would say something like, I am healthy. I am healthy. I am healthy. And it's happening now. It's present now. But I would put a little bit more energy and emotion into that. Like, I'm happy, healthy. And what was, I don't know, I'm trying to think of one off the
Like I'm
spot.
feeling more energized and ecstatic every day. I
I'm
feel
I'm
like my
healthy,
life is
happy,
coming to me.
and
Yeah.
energetic, ecstatic, and I say the words while I also do something physical. So sometimes when I'm really working on reprogramming something, I have one of those small trampolines, and
Okay.
I'll jump up and down on the trampoline while I'm repeating the affirmation, and I'm saying it, and I'm putting energy into it. Sometimes I make a song out of it, like I'm happy, healthy, energetic, and filled with light and love. I'm happy, healthy, energetic, filled with light, and I might put some rhythm to it and clap it, and
I
then I
love that.
start to embody it. It's called an incantation where you start to actually get it into the nervous system. I'm gonna be
Now,
honest with you.
now is that because like you want to overload the senses? Like is that because you're putting like a like hearing, sound, movement, like you're getting all of those body encompasses to attach more nerves to it?
All of that. It's also programming it into your system. You've spent 5, 10 decades of years programming something else. And if you want to program in a quicker way, you have to get it on multiple layers. So it's not just writing it on a piece of note, post it, and that's it. It's like you say it, you speak it, you're putting energy and emotion and movement. It's getting into the nervous system, it's getting into the physical body, it's getting it on multiple layers so you can program it quicker. Let's say you pick an affirmation to do for a week, you can radically change in that week if you're doing it in the way that I'm describing. And I'm going to be honest, you're going to do this and it feels like you're an idiot, right? Like you're just
Abs-
like you're like
Absolutely. Anyone
you're like
not
this is
doing this before?
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You feel like you're a complete goofball. You're like, I can't believe I'm doing this. So you're gonna have that counter talking, like, why are you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. And that's exactly what you're countering is that part of you that thinks it's stupid. So you have to make it fun and playful and let yourself have fun with this stuff. Let yourself embrace it and make it into a game and find joy in reprogramming yourself and conquering these aspects of yourself. Otherwise, it's going to feel like work or it's going to feel stupid and you're not going to do it. But when you start to make it into a game and you put music on and you put your favorite song on while you're doing it, you're bouncing around and you're just like pumping yourself up with your affirmations that are in present tense and you're generating that energy, then you go to work that day, you're gonna be a different person.
I
You're gonna be a
love
different
that.
person.
And it's interesting you say about doing it multiple, which I guess I did it subconsciously. So we practice me and my wife practice gratitude. We've got like a little rectangle block that we walk like pretty much every morning. And we say to each other 3 things that we're grateful for, and then 3 things that we want to accomplish for the week. And we just have this. And at first you're like searching for things to be grateful for. And then you recognize like the world shows you every day different opportunities and things that you're like, wow, I really take this for granted. So I love that. I love that you shared the tips with us. And this has been a huge like water fountain of knowledge. So I encourage, you listeners as well too, like re-listen to the episodes, take separate pieces, right? Like the show notes is not going to do justice on this one. I will openly tell you that I'm not going to be able to say it like Laura in the show notes. Like listen to this repeatedly because I think changing the talk, which the self-talk within you is all about repetition. It's about beating the amount of negative times that you talk to yourself. And if you do that, then it can continue to build.
100%. And your mind is like a garden, so you got to choose what you want to grow in there. And when you grow a garden, you always have to pull the weeds.
Very
Always.
true.
And you also want to have boundaries around that garden so somebody doesn't just walk through and crush all your plants. So be mindful with the relationships you have around you and take care of that garden. And it's true devotion, you know. And not everybody's going to grow a garden. Some people prefer to buy their fruits and vegetables at the grocery store and let somebody else do the work. But
Can I just say that your analogies are wild, but they're fantastic. They're absolutely phenomenal. Every time you say something, I'm like, damn, yeah, that's really good. Oh, I love it. I love the garden aspect of it because it's real. You can see it, right? And it puts kind of the physical to the non-physical. I think it's great.
yeah, and weeding is part of the process. Don't make weeding wrong. Don't be miserable about it. Enjoy the process and keep that garden nice and clean and pristine and enjoy the fruits because the fruits are why you grow the garden in the first place.
I love that. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking your time today. As I suspected with something like this, we're probably going to need like a second episode going into this. And for those listening as well, too, if you guys have questions for Laura, so while we wrap up the podcast, I'm going to drop all of Laura's socials on. So then that way you guys know where she is. So it's going to be at lauralouise.ca. I'll also drop in her Facebook for the Royal Arts Healing Academy that she is the owner of. And then also too, I will find her amazing book. It is Discovering the World that she has on Amazon. All of the links to that will be in the show notes. But if you have questions for Laura on anything that we talked about, her contact information will be there to reach out directly. I really think that we're going to end up doing a part 2 either to this or even talking about different things as well too. So you guys and gals listening, let me know kind of what you want me and Laura to chat about because she is fantastic. And Laura, I appreciate you sharing literally all of the gold and silver when it comes to the headspace, because I think you've made a lot of people's day, including mine today. So thank you.
My pleasure. It's been an honor and I really appreciate being here. Thank you. And yeah, here for any help or support, any questions, 100%. I want to see people win and we need more joy and more love in the world. And anything I can do to support that, I'm all in. So thank you for having me, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Nice. No worries. I appreciate that. Thanks. And before we had a funny story, me and Laura met in a random parking lot looking for the same building. And it just goes to show you that energy, like good energy, just always finds a way to connect. And that's how you know ultimately you will be okay in the world, because as long as you focus on positivity. And it was one of those things where it was like, hey, it's like, oh, hello, like an awkward, but like it just kind of worked and we connected. And I was like, wow. So it's like you will always find what you are looking for if you're going to actively search for it, which is good. So thought I'd throw in that little adventure in there for for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. It was my intuition that was like, ask that guy, he might know where to go.
Absolutely right. And I was like, I truly don't know. We were clueless together. It was good. But
we found it though. We found the place. It was all good.
Absolutely, we did. Yes. So thanks to all the listeners for listening. And that is all for this podcast episode. Well, it seems I'm all out of info juice for today. That's all for this episode. And thank you so much for listening. Please leave a raving review for me if you've learned something good, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're in the mood for some more great content and tools to get your hormones on track, why not check out our free Facebook group and the blog on our site. We do amazing weekly trainings in our group that me and my wife call Tea and Teachings that give good tips for anything hormones and metabolism related. It's also a great community where you get to share your goals and success with like-minded people just like you. I'll make sure to drop both the Facebook group link and the blog link in the show notes for you. Or if you're ambitious like me, the name of the group is Weight Loss and Balanced Hormones. It'll say Fit for All beside it with a picture of me. So come and join us and have more fun.